Mike joining us, or is it just us?
No, just us today.
Okay.
Brian,
Okay.
Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, the Women's Broadcast TV Network, Women on TV.tv, and IT247 out of Franklin, Tennessee. So today we go back to movies. A good friend, I've been waiting to get a hold of him all year. He's been busy doing stuff, just like the year 2020 so far. We're halfway through it. The one and only Mike Kaspar. Hello, Mike. It's good to see you. We've never done a Zoom interview when it comes to movie reviews before. This is a first.
Well, thank you. Hey, Brian, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
This is normal for you. Hey, I'm glad, when I talked to you the other day, I was really happy that you've been hanging in there and doing stuff. You look good. I was glad to hear about stuff with HBO and Showtime. So again, nobody's getting the same thing when it comes to movies. We don't know what's happening with distribution. I've been talking to people around the world at certain things, and it's kind of up in the air. The movies were going to open at one point, which was the wrong thing to do. Now they've decided not to because it's not the right time to do it. It's very interesting. What do you see on your part when it comes to a lot of this stuff?
Well, you're right. Absolutely. This has sort of turned the whole movie distribution world upside down. How do you get, the filmmakers are still out there making great movies, but how do you get them? How do you get them to market? How do you get it in front of people? And virtual cinema obviously is one way they're doing it, going straight to VOD platforms. It is, in some ways, it's been tough financially on filmmakers and for distributors and for studios, but in other ways, it's made the independent filmmaker, it's given them a little bit more of an opportunity than it would have normally. If we were in a normal distributing films into movie theater chains, advertising budgets were where they used to be, a lot of these small films would have no chance to be seen or heard from. But now, because most things are going either to virtual cinema or they're going to a platform, it flattens the playing field in some ways for these filmmakers and for their films to have an opportunity to be seen. Because when you go online, if you go to your Fandango or your Vudu or Amazon, all you're seeing is a picture and a synopsis of a film. And you haven't been subjected to $100 million advertising budget. So when you look at that particular, in that moment, you may be caught, it may catch your attention that this is a film that I should check out. And I think that's hopefully helping independent filmmakers get an opportunity to be seen where they normally would not have been.
Let me ask you this. Before this happened, were you watching a lot of the movie trailers ahead of time, or would you just watch the movie in general? Because the problem that I have right now is I'd like to see the one sheet, like the poster, what it looks like, and maybe have a synopsis. But, every synopsis sounds interesting, but not every movie is good. Yeah. So my problem, what I'm having is, yeah, we're getting a lot of links for stuff, but my God, do I want to spend more time watching a bad movie? Sometimes I just want to watch something's good. Are you having that issue too?
Well, I think you obviously watch a lot of films. I do as well. I think we benefit from the fact that we can oftentimes kind of sniff out what just doesn't sound right in a synopsis. Maybe it's something, it's a film that's been made dozens of times before in terms of sort of the basic plot line. I always look for something that sounds like an interesting take on something. That's my first read is this sound interesting? Does it sound like something that I might not have seen before? And then I'll look at who's in the film and who's directing the film. And oftentimes, if you get a film with those criteria where they meet the criteria of interesting, maybe I've heard of the filmmaker before, and it's a cast of people that I find in the past have been good actors. That's sort of how I get to a film, to sort of make a decision about it. But you and I have the advantage of seeing so many movies every year that we probably have a better sort of range of what we know and what we can kind of build on in terms of our knowledge base. But I hear what you're saying. There's so much product out there, and we're talking about films, but when you look at what's going on cable with these multi-part series, there's so much out there. I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have a good answer other than to just sort of rely on your instincts. What do you think would be interesting to watch?
Well, you did,
That
you did say how the studios COVID-19, how they used to market films. Who's the director? Who's in the cast? And then it might be interesting because you could see that trailer. Now you can't see that stuff. Stuff is just going to the man or it's popping up on Netflix. And then here's my thing. This is where I'm bad. I'm a movie whore still when it comes to this. If I think it sounds interesting and it's got 13 episodes or 17 episodes, once I start to play it, I can't just say, okay, one episode is enough. I've got to finish it. I've got to go through the 13 episode, the 17th. That's me. That's my issue. Because I'm still writing everything that I'm seeing down. I'm like, oh my God, this first episode didn't get me. Does it get better? So I have the hope that it gets better. And two series like that did get better. But my God, they can have new releases coming up on a Tuesday or Friday for Netflix, for example, and they got 13 episodes. Okay, do you want to invest 13 hours, however long it takes, Do I want to see another movie that I'm not too sure about because I can't go to the theaters and watch a good movie now? That's my issue.
Right. Well, and this is where we live in an age where of social media. And oftentimes you can you can see the range of reactions to a film and kind of get a feel for where you're going to end up after, if you've just seen one episode, or you're trying to figure out if you want to watch, you want to watch it at all. I know this isn't a popular thing to say, but I do like Rotten Tomatoes for this reason. I don't just look at a score for a film. I'll actually read the reviews, and often I will dive into the actual review in its full form, as opposed to just sort of the blurb. And it doesn't take very long to figure out whether or not this is a pretty good movie or not. I mean, just honestly. And then social media will sort of be the icing on the cake. If I look at what are other people saying that aren't critics, then I got a pretty good idea of what it's going to be like, and that helps a lot. So
it's funny. I had a publicist out in New York say, "Are you certified to RT?" And I was like, "Who's RT?" Obviously it was Rotten Tomatoes, and I'm thinking certified. I'm like thinking, I have 5.4 million views and counting. The last time I talked to you, I was at 3 million, Mike.
Yeah.
It's turned over like literally 3 days ago to 5.4, and we will get to 6 really quickly. We're jumping that. The first thing I thought of was like, wow, I feel insulted because I send them the image of what I had. So I want everybody to know, here's my numbers. They keep going up before COVID-19, during, and still. This is not going away for 5 years, I keep telling people, and it's not, whether they believe it or not. So my whole thing was, who is this person? Are they not reading the email? Are they not seeing the links when I send them a show and it's got 1 million views on one show, or 900K today that we have in one show that hasn't been aired on TV, that's only on that site? What does that tell you?
Yeah.
And they're not paying attention. And then they have no phone number, so I can't reach them. And the film was Circus of Books, the documentary that Rachel Matson did. You spoke with her, and Rachel is a friend, and I knew the family. That's, when I talked to her the next day, it had done 1 million views the first week. I think it's done 20+ million views. And now it's going to be nominated for Best Documentary for an Academy. So I said, whoever this publicist was, and I'll call you on it because I don't care, because these are my numbers. I'm not aligned to a network. If you don't like me, that's okay, but I'm not going anywhere. But I can tell you all the people that I'm helping and all the filmmakers I'm having on without a publicist. And you do the same thing. You're going to help that independent filmmaker and that director. And I think that's why I like you, and my hat goes off to you on that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's fun. One thing about sort of being in the world of documentary and foreign films as well, and also the small independent films, is what you were saying earlier. Is this going to be a film that's going to be interesting? Is this going to be a film that that I'm going to possibly like? The thing about independent films that I have found, not all of them are great. I would never say that, but at the same time, if they've managed to kind of swim upstream to the point where they're getting distributed, where there's some kind of a somebody behind them, whether it be Magnolia, whether it be First Run, whatever it is, Focus Films, chances are it's something that is going to be good. I mean, I will bet you more money on on an independent film that has managed to get to a Magnolia level distributor or someone like that, as opposed to a big budget studio film that feels like it's the same movie again and again and again as the prequel was, or as the sequel, whatever. So I feel very fortunate to be comfortable in this part of the film world, and it's been very rewarding for me personally. Just not putting aside the show, which I thoroughly enjoy doing, but at the same time, I feel like I've seen so many really well done films that enriched me in some way or broadened my horizons. It's particularly in the world of documentaries.
Well, I mean, again, my hat goes off to, and I don't say this to people if I don't believe it. You are in a good spot, the right place at the right time. But you have been there before. I think people are paying more attention to you now, which I think is.
Yeah.
Talk about your outlet, what you're doing, and what are you seeing coming up now? Because I'm not seeing some of the things that you're getting. I'm getting some of the smaller ones because I've just fallen off some of this, and I've just been doing different things. But slowly but surely, I'm coming back on in a different way.
Good to hear. My show is called Film School Radio, filmschoolradio.com if you're interested in finding out more about it. And I've been doing it about 13 years. Been broadcasting out of a college radio station out of Orange County, California. And I'm now up to around 1,500 filmmakers that I've been honored to have on the program over the course of that time. And we are doing well. As an example, I just posted interviews we did with Agnieszka Holland, director of Europa from back in the 90s.
I love that film. Wow.
Yeah. And she was nominated for an Academy Award for a Best Foreign Film. That just a new film out called Mr. Jones. And it's about a journalist who traveled to Ukraine in the 1930s, who stumbled across Stalin's program to starve eventually 4 million people because he did not like them. This is a story that was historically sort of been buried, and it was buried at the time because the United States and Britain were trying to cultivate the Soviet Union in case of a war with Germany, which seemed to be looming. So they kept it quiet. In the meantime, 4 to 5 million Ukrainians died of starvation. So interesting film, interesting story. And there it is. Another one I really, really liked a lot, it's coming out next week, or actually on the 17th, it's called Sunlit Night. And it stars Jenny Slade and Zach Galifianakis is in it. There's a number of people in it. It's a really nice little indie film about an artist who's been rejected sort of on the art scene in New York City and ends up in the Arctic Circle of Norway, painting the inside of a barn for a artist who's sort of fading, sort of a guy who's lost his mojo a little bit. It is a beautiful, wonderful little gem of a film. It's called Sunlit Night. I really strongly recommend you check it out. Jenny Slade was also the producer of it, and just a beautiful little film. So I'm going to recommend that one in case anyone's interested in checking it out on the 17th. Welcome to Chechnya, wonderful documentary by David France. Was also nominated for an Academy Award for How to Survive a Plague. His new film is out on HBO. Terrific film. So there's a lot out there. There's so many films out there right now, and so I urge you to plug in to the independent film world as best you can if you're listening to the sound of our voices, and you'll be rewarded. It's a terrific place to be. And Brian, thank you so much for what you've been doing over the years, bringing all these different voices into our world. So it's terrific. It's really,
well, I look at it this way. There's not a lot of us, really left. And the issue is, we have to help each other, one way or another. Yeah. I'm going to be fine. My issue is I want to help those people that I liked. I want to help those people that deserve to be helped. We always want to help filmmakers, especially the indie films. The issue is, this is the way that we're going to be doing stuff. Telecommunications, animation, AI technology, voiceover, cleaning services are not going away. That's going to be the top thing to do. I think we will have less red carpets if we not have them for a while. And then, we're always going to have to wear masks from now on. So here's my question to you, Mike. When do you think you'll go to the movies?
Wow. Well, I would have, 3 weeks ago, I would have said October, September or October. I would have thought that there would be at least a gap between what was at that time talked about as the second wave. Before the second wave, I thought, well, there'll be some opening of theaters and we'll have an opportunity to kind of get out and mingle a little bit. But the last week has told me anything. It's told me that I don't think we'll be going anywhere until after the first of this coming year. I don't think we'll be, I think January, February, maybe, or maybe a year from now, but I don't see it happening anytime before the end of this year, beginning of next year. I just don't see it. What about you? What do you think?
Well, so here's my other question before I answer that is, would you go to the movie theaters between now and December? If they had a good movie out, whether it's James Bond in November or December, providing it's not pushed to next year, which it should be pushed to next year, would you go to the movie theaters?
Wow, that's a great question. Social distancing, masks, I think I could be induced into going to a theater, but it'd have to be something pretty extraordinary. It'd have to be a theatrical experience. It couldn't just be a good film or a great film even. There'd have to be something about being there in person that would enhance me being there. And let me just say for the record, being in a theater, watching a great film, surrounded by people, from your community, there's no better experience than that. I'm not in any way downplaying that, but we live in difficult times. We live in troubled times now. And I don't know what would get me out into a theater right now. I don't know. You talked about the James Bond film. I don't know.
So here's the reason why I asked that, because not one movie critic that I talked to through all the shows would go. Not any of my friends would go. And I would tell them, if I'm not going, that should tell you something. And remember, anybody who's watching our show, I'm a movie whore. I need to go to the movies just to get away for 2 hours. I need to go to have that movie going experience. I hated to hand over my money if I didn't have a free movie pass, but I still wanted to go to support the arts, that director, that cast, that great film. Plus I wanted to have the popcorn. That's what I wanted to have. I don't know. I can't say that I would honestly go unless I went to the very first showing, and that I'd want to see, not because I'm scared, I would want to see how clean the theaters would be in between. That's what I would want to know. Because whether you have one person in there or 10 people in there, this is airborne now and it affects respiratory system. So if you wear a mask into the theaters, wear it into the concession stand, and wear it when you're leaving, what, are you not going to wear your mask when you're watching a movie? Or are you going to take your mask off when you're watching a movie as you're eating a popcorn and a hot dog? How are you going to do all this stuff? And then what happens? You and I have both seen the movie Outbreak. What happens when someone starts coughing or sneezing? You're going to run out of the theater or what?
I know. And short of putting plexiglass between each of the seats, I mean, honestly, that I can't imagine that they would ever do that. But you're right. No, all the things you bring up, that's why I said it'd have to be something extraordinary, and it'd have to be something that being in a theater would really make a difference in me seeing the film there. I have one sort of bit of, I don't know if it's good business advice, it's just something I've been thinking about. If anyone was ever in the market to buy a movie theater, now would be the time to do that. I think you could pick off some of the independent, the smaller venues right now, because I do believe in theater. I do believe in a gathering place for the community. And I think that in order moving forward, and that's something I think you and I have even talked about this in the past, if you own a theater, if you're going to be hoping to bring people into that theater, you have to make it more of an experience than just watching the film. And I think there are a lot of ways you can make it more than that. And I think also that why couldn't a theater be kind of a community center as well as a movie theater? Why can't it be a gathering place during the day? Why can't you sell coffee, put up a small bookstore in the lobby to create an environment where people get used to coming in for just more than putting down their $12.50 to watch a movie at night, that 2.5 hour experience. Instead, let's try to make these places where people gather for a lot of different reasons. And I think that is something, if I'm looking at the future of theaters, this is something that I've been advocating for a long, long time. It's got to be more than just a 2.5 hour experience that you experience every 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is. You got to make it more than that. And I think there's a place for that. And I think especially coming out of the pandemic, there are going to be people who will be looking for a place to gather safely, to reconnect with people in their community. And I think that would be a really good time to own a theater, and that it's more than just a theater for films.
Well, someone who did buy a theater, so Netflix owns the Egyptian theater now in Hollywood. So, you know, Netflix
Okay.
showing their movies there. Disney's gonna, you know, they've got the Crest Theater right on Hollywood Boulevard. So they do that. It's gonna be really interesting to see how things are done that way, because will people come back and see something? They'll see a good movie, but how many people do you let in? Have you taken that extra seat out yet? You know, you have to do that. But I say start early. There, you know, there'll be some people that would love to go see a movie at 8 in the morning. I would. I always like to go see the first theater, the screening, and then they started pushing them back. Like here in Vegas, where I am, you know, the first screening isn't, you know, the first showing isn't until noon. Well, I'm used to going at 10 o'clock in the morning. I like that because I would be done by noon. Sometimes I would stay and see two, you know, but
Yeah.
I was like, I don't like going to a theater the later it is, because I want to come back and watch an independent film. That was always my regimen, how I did stuff. Go watch something I wanted to see on the big screen. Okay, I'm gonna come back. I'll watch that good independent film, whether it's good or bad. That's how I always did it.
Yeah.
But I'm forced to. I can't go to the theaters to get away for 2 hours. That's why I'm more hesitant to watch another movie. I'm like, well, I want to invest the time now to watch this movie that might not be so good, but you want to support and say, hey, I watched it. Come on the show. It's
Right.
really tricky now.
Right. Well, I think another thing about what we're going through with the pandemic is that the means of distribution for films is changing accordingly, right? They're figuring out ways that everyone's desperate to get these films in front of people. And I think, as you said, I mean, sort of staggering a schedule for a movie theater. So you have a film that's screening at 9 o'clock in the morning. It might be a different film that you would see at night. It could be a retrospective. It could be a John Wayne film, or name it, you know, sort of Jimmy Stewart film or a Alfred Hitchcock film in the morning.
That's a good idea. I think that'd be great.
And so you're mixing it up. And again, I think these distributors, film distributors and studios, are much more open to the idea of the sky's the limit, right? They're competing with HBO. You're competing with Netflix and Hulu and all these other wonderful platforms for filmmakers. But let's make it so that it is something that you add flexibility to people's opportunities, or for the ways in which they can see these different films. I think, again, I'm kind of bullish on theaters. Right now, it looks like they're out for the count for some of these chains that we love, that we've come to really depend on for good independent films. But I think that if they can get through this, or for those who are looking for opportunities, I think this is a good time to be looking at theaters, and look to the future. Start building something that is really going to last, built for this kind of a situation, built to maintain its independence for as long as you can moving forward. So I'm hoping, if anyone's listening to the sound of our voices, sees the same opportunity that I do, because filmmakers aren't going away, films aren't going away. Great filmmakers are still out there being born as we speak. Let's just sort of make it so that this experience of going to a theater is sitting with people that you know and love. And also, filmmakers, in my experience, are much more likely to get into these theaters to talk to the audiences about their work, at least in the realm that I am in. They love being in front of an audience, talking about something that is a labor of love that they've been working on. So I think, you know, if it's not the director, maybe it's the cinematographer, maybe it's one of the actors. There are ways in which you can enhance these opportunities for people, so that they want to be there. And I'm it's tough. It's hard to see the silver lining right now, but as I said, filmmakers aren't going away. Films aren't going away. They're going to be continuing to make these movies. Let's maximize the opportunity for people to enjoy them in the best possible environment.
How's the college station going to be in that college in general? Is there a fall? Did they come back? Are they online? And then, you know,
Oh, they're still closed. the campus is shut down. UCI is shut down. USC looks like they're going to be shut down for a long time. I don't even know a university, maybe there are, and I don't know of, that is even going to be open for fall, let alone fall, but also moving forward. Who knows? This thing is scrambling so many of our institutions, right? Higher learning. Parents are shelling out tens of thousands of dollars a year for their kids to go to an experience, to be socialized, to be educated, to come out with a degree. And now everybody's online. How is this going to change our world? You know, we don't know. And there's a lot of positives to come out of this, in the sense of sort of reassessing our priorities, our values, what we tend to value now. Before the pandemic may not be the things we value after it. I think valuing people in our relationships is going to be more important than it was before the pandemic. And I think there's opportunity. There's the character in Chinese script, I think it's Mandarin, for crisis is also the same for opportunity. And I think that I think about that as a good model. Crisis, yes. We've got to get through it. Opportunity as well, and I'm hoping that prevails.
Do you see maybe, unless it's on special occasions, maybe some one-on-ones in person, or is that gone already too?
Oh, you mean in an interview opportunity? Is that what
Yeah.
you're? You know, when you can get. You know, there's nothing like being in a room. You and I, when we've had the opportunity to be in the same place to talk, there's nothing you can do to replace that experience. That's a great question. I think it's so easy to interview people now through this technology, Zoom or Skype or whatever it is, that it's easy to fall into that as just, this is the norm now. This is how we're going to talk for the rest of our lives. That's a great question. I think on television, when people are sitting side by side, you can tell. You sense the energy in the. But the other part of it is you can interview anybody anywhere in the world, and if unless you're sitting, unless you live in the same town. That's not a bad substitute. I don't know, right? I think there's no substitute for human connection and the vibe you get from a one-on-one conversation. So I guess what I'm saying is I hope we do, but I don't know if we will.
Well, the interesting thing is that the reason why I asked, because the Montalban Theater on Hollywood and Vine, they had an independent film. I think it was Magnolia put it on. They did it on the top of their roof because it's outside. They say they had 100 people there. They had 6 or 8 photographers, no interviews on the red carpet. And then I saw a photo of 2 people. I don't know if they were in the cast or the guests were invited. Their snapshot was them wearing their mask, which I thought was interesting because you can't tell who it is. Even if it was Joe or whatever, you might be able to tell by the hair, but you can't see the face. So, one of those. Then you go on the roof, but that's on the roof. So my question is, I don't see the red carpets coming back for a while. And I've been talking to a lot of these people. They're not going to put their clients out there if they don't have to go out and do anything, because of what you just said. We have Zoom, we have Skype, we have the phone. That's where we are.
Right. And I think at this point, we're in a place where if you saw a bunch of people gathered on a red carpet in Hollywood, there'd be sort of a cultural reaction to that. You know what I mean? Where I think the politics of the pandemic come into play. Who are these people who think that, placing the crew in jeopardy of contracting a virus? I don't see that until we have a vaccine, until we've gone through a couple of seasons where the pandemic hasn't come back. My concern, and I'm going to sound like such a doomsday person right now, but I don't think this is the last virus that we're going to have to battle. I think and I'm going to get a little political here, but I think with climate change, I think we're going to see viruses begin to really take their place in our world that we haven't seen before. I think about the permafrost that's been receding in the Arctic
Yeah.
area, and they
Arctic, yeah.
help. I heard scientists talk about the viruses that have been frozen for hundreds of thousands of years because now these spores or whatever that causes these viruses to take place. Again, I don't want to go down this road because it's such a negative thing to talk about, but I think we are going to be dealing with other seasonal, I won't, if pandemic is too strong a word, but seasonal viruses that are going to create havoc in our
And
world.
I'm going to save you
And
from that because you're absolutely right. It's really not political. You can go back to a movie, I think it was '03 or '06, called Chasing Ice, where the filmmaker put 43 cameras up in the Arctic, and he watched them in 1 year's time. That was in '03, I believe, as the latest as '06. And I remember talking to him on that. Climate change didn't just start overnight. It's been happening for decades. So you also talk about the Amazon. The Amazon is still on fire. Imagine what was being kept in the rainforest there that's been unleashed. We have stuff there, and as you said, you can look at the movie Meg. Certain things trapped beyond the ice are trapped there for a reason. Now it's being released. So in every movie, there's a grain of truth. So you can think of Meg, Chasing Ice, real documentary. You can go Outbreak. The scene that I kept thinking about, and I watched it. I went back to watch it, and as soon as it came on Netflix, I was waiting for them to put it on. I think it was mid-March they put it up. I'm like, there it is. They just put it up. They had no announcement. They just put it up. So I went back to watch it, and that was in '97, '98. And I remember doing the interviews for that. And timely. Still, it was not dated. I was surprised by that. And so, but then it was the coughing scene in the movie theater. Where are we at? If someone coughs in the movie theater. But really, it was about the government hiding of a vaccine type of thing. Where we are, we're not going to have vaccines for a while, whether people believe it or not. It's not going to be till next year at least. It takes a while to do all this stuff.
yeah. Yeah. And by the way, I didn't even know this. I mean, I'd heard it sort of vaguely referred to in history. Almost exactly 100 years ago, we had a pandemic that swept through the world. It was an avian-based, a bird-based virus that killed somewhere between 50 and 100 million people in the world. Now, our world is different now. Our ability to contain these viruses is different. But nonetheless, 100 years ago, almost swept off the pages of history was this world-changing virus that occurred at the tail end of World War I or in the midst of World War, right at the end of it, I'm sorry. And so these things happen, but absolutely right. The Arctic was 100 degrees about 10 days ago. 100 degrees.
It's not supposed to be that. Not at all. That's not what it's supposed to be.
I know, and I'm saying we're consumed with other things in our world, and rightfully, but I heard nary a mention of the fact that it was 100 degrees in the Arctic at a time when everyone, as you described, everyone knows that the Arctic and the Antarctic are going through significant changes that are going to have impacts on our world for the next several decades. So
I'm not even looking that far, Mike. I'm only looking between now and September 16th, and then from September 16th to the end of the year, because it's that bad, unfortunately. But yes, I remember this time, because this time last year I was coming back from Tennessee, and I remember we were there I was there June 18th with two of the girls, and who I had flown in from Los Angeles, and it was one of those things. We were speaking, we were doing our things. We had 2 million views there. That was a year ago. Now we're in, July right now, and what's going on? It was 78 degrees then. It was 78 and 68 last year. And my mind is still this. I didn't even know it was 100. I didn't see that. I believe it to be true, what you just said. I didn't see that. Of course it's true, That's not good.
Yeah. No. And last year was the hottest year on record, and almost every year of this decade has been either the hottest year or one of the top 2 or 3 hottest years in the recorded history of charting these things. Our world is heating up. The Arctic is 100. Last year there were Arctic fires that burned for months. I mean this, and again, barely a mention because we are consumed by the sort of tabloid attention to the leadership in this country, which sure we should be paying attention. And there are other sweeping social changes with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter. These things are important, and they deserve the attention that they're getting. But at the same time, we're missing some really big things that are really there. And I think part of the problem in covering it is there's no you can't wrap it up in a 10-minute news cycle, right? You can't do an interview with a climatologist and say, well, thanks for stopping by. Well, you know, we'll have this fixed by this time next week, pardon me. So these are, and films, let's tie it back to films. Documentary filmmakers have been charting this for a long, long time. And thank God they have, because I wouldn't know the things that I know about it if it weren't for these wonderful films and these filmmakers. So,
It's funny. You know what's funny, Mike, is that every night before I go to sleep, to calm I call it calming my brain down, I have to watch a documentary because it'll make me fall asleep, and then I go back and I rewind it where I stop. So I've been watching The Universe on Netflix, and they're really good because it talks about what you talked about. And I go, the three things that we just can't do anything about. You know, a meteorite,
right.
you know, those things out there, you just can't. That's what wiped out the planet in the first place, you know. And
Right.
You can't do anything about it. But it's interesting because we know more about having everything out there. Think of the series Mars that Ron Howard, Brian Glazer put up there. People are engaged to that. One of the engineers who's become my friend, Case Wright from SpaceX, his team actually put up build the rocket engine that blast off the civilians into space. And I was really happy. On the flip side of that, he does fashion, but he was really creating solar wind, which is what his passion was. And I thought that was really fascinating. Right. So it's interesting to see all these coming in. Again, this is one reason why I love watching documentaries. Man, you just learn so much from them, you know?
Right. Well, and that's the thing. And thank you for mentioning that, because that's the thing. While our world seems to be struggling, and social society seems to be fraying at the edges, we have this world of science which is doing these incredible things. Amazing things are happening in the world of science, unfathomable in some ways, science fiction in other ways, and yet we seem to be on this race towards the cliff. Right? We're either going to be, I'll say, rescued by science, but we're going to see a better path forward by listening to scientists and climatologists and these other people who know science. And the other side of it is this, I'll call it the Yahoo factor. And we're both running towards the cliff, which is, and on one hand, science can lift us up. On the other hand, Yahooism can take us right over the edge. And who's going to get there? Which one are we going to tie our hopes to? And I'm tying my hopes to science and people. Relationships. People matter, and so we'll see. Are we still talking about movies?
Yeah, well, because everything ties back to the movies and where we are. One thing that tripped me out when I was in Miami for the Super Bowl weekend. I was walking by because, Miami's, the water is coming up 3 inches. Miami's going to be underground. I would say the next 3 years because I was tripping out about this. I saw 7 cars parked in the driveway. And then the guy, he's at the door, he takes the money. I saw a woman walking back with nice high heels. The water was ankle deep to when she was walking back to her car. Now, she didn't park in that when she parked. And this was at 10:30 in the morning when I walked by there. It didn't rain the night before because I was there. She wasn't going to park in the middle of that in a parking structure where it's like up to her ankles. And the thing, and I watched this and I wanted to take a picture of this, but I was like, my mouth was still dropped because she had no choice but to walk in it. And then she's not taking her shoes off because it wouldn't have mattered, And then I knew she's in the car because I was waiting for her to pull out. And she's like, I knew what she was thinking. Okay, do I have an extra pair of pantyhose or socks to put on the shoes? Because now my shoes are ruined. When I parked here, I had no idea that it was going to come back. It was going to be ankle deep. What does that tell you?
Yeah.
That's trippy.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard about this phenomena in Miami, and it's going to happen here on the West Coast as well. It's the high tide there. It's the high tide phenomenon. It's not a phenomenon. High tide happens all the time, but it's that Miami. You're right. The water level has already creeped up to a point where when it gets to a high tide situation or a super high tide, what do they call it? King tide, I think.
But this was 10:30 in the morning.
I know. Well, I'm just saying this is a regular, as you know, it's a regular occurrence now in Miami. And you're absolutely right. Most of Florida, a good chunk of Florida is just above sea level. And so is a lot of New Orleans and Louisiana and that Gulf Coast.
Forget about Louisiana. You know, there's no going back. Yeah. You can build the biggest wall you want. It's not going to help.
Well, I'll push back on that a little bit in that, Denmark has been dealing with this kind of a situation for as long as they've been Denmark. I'm sorry, did I say Denmark? I meant Holland, pardon me. Holland has been dealing with this as long as there's been a Holland, and they have figured out a way to do it, and they are stepping up in terms of their technology of holding the sea back. They've become very, very good at it, and we have been trying to model some of our newer projects over how they're doing it in Holland, and there is reason to be hopeful. But this is going to take an incredible effort of infrastructure in this country and around the world. I think, if I'm not mistaken, more than 60% of the world or 70% of the world lives within 20, 25 miles of the coast. There's some number like that. So this is something that we have almost no choice but to address. And when sea levels do rise 2 or 3 or 4 feet, I'll give you an example. Indonesia. Jakarta is basically sinking right as we speak right now. It's sinking. They are moving the capital of Indonesia because they have to. Jakarta is sinking. Look it up. Some places it has sunk as much as 6 feet. Mexico City, for some reason, and this is different than rising sea levels, but Mexico City has pumped out so much of the aquifer under Mexico City that they now are dealing with literally buildings are sinking right into the ground. So we have to figure this out. There are ways in which we can manage our resources, build infrastructure that can help mitigate this. But one thing we have to stop doing is putting carbon in the atmosphere that's causing all this to happen. And when we figure out a way to do that quickly, then we can start addressing some of the issues that are coming up now. And infrastructure is the only way out for us, for the most part, for most of society, is to figure out ways in which we can mitigate what is coming. So I'm with you. There's a lot. And again, I learned a lot of this in documentaries.
Absolutely.
This is one of the things, this has been kind of, people probably know me by this particular phrase that I use in almost every conversation now. We're talking about world issues, we're talking about sports, we're talking about whatever. I will often tee up the conversation with, oh, I just saw a documentary about this. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've started a conversation when somebody brings something up. Oh, well, I just saw a documentary about that. And let me tell you what I learned from that.
Not only do you get more people paying attention, well, where did you see this? Well, I had the filmmaker, or I saw the movie, or both on my show. I mean, I think that's great. See, and I missed it. So I miss that's what I miss. I miss having those in-person press days. We can actually go meet that person in person and be thankful that they did that documentary. And I always go back to March of the Penguins. Fidel had it. Yeah. And I just remember this. No one wanted to talk to him because they said his French was broken English and that he couldn't. He could speak a little bit, but when they're uncomfortable, they don't want to. And it doesn't matter. It's about the film. And I never forgot. 6 weeks later, March of the Penguins won Best Documentary. And then I see him 6 weeks for the release on DVD, and he comes and gives me a hug for being there and thanking them. And I never forgot that. Oh, come the summer, believe it or not, this is funny. It was still the Ritz-Carlton in Pasadena back then. Now it's called the Langham Spa and Hotel Resort. 2 penguins get out in the month of July out of a limousine, Mike, from March of the Penguins. The handler, the trainer, puts them up on the counter to check in. He puts a credit card in the fin. It was said March of the Penguins because they were promoting March of the Penguins, I think going to Hallmark. No one except for me and 3 other people saw this. They had a red carpet. The Penguins walked down the red carpet. It's hilarious. I got like one shot of that, and then put them up on the counter. Good thing I was wandering around instead of in the ballroom to see this. And then what they did at the pool, this is in the month of July. They frosted the whole pool over so that the Penguins could have their own like skating ice rink top of the pool. The month of July. It was hilarious.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Now, and that, by the way, documentary filmmakers, if you're listening to this, thank you. Thank all of you, because these movies don't make any money. And you know that going in. You know you're not going to get rich. I mean, every once in a while, March of the Penguins, you get a few that break out and they make some money. But they do this because they are driven. Talk about passion. Driven to do something. This guy has spent how many months in freezing cold, godless kind of environment to do this, following back and forth and make this mass migration from one part of the Arctic or the Antarctic, I can't remember, back and forth, right? They do this. How many documentaries, Chasing Ice, Jeff Orlovsky, how many of these guys just go out and do this because they're like penguins? They have to. They literally go out there because this is what is driving them, some passion, something inside of them to illuminate the world we live in, or about people that they feel need to be spotlighted. And they do it, knowing that it's probably going to end up bankrupting them or, barely making a living doing it. And they do it anyway. And I cannot tell you how my heart literally, just goes out to these people for what they do, and how grateful I am. And I think so many of us, like you as well, are grateful to them for having done that. And I can't even put it to words why you do something like that, but they do it anyway. So, gosh.
Hey, Mike, we got about 60 seconds. Give your social media links. Give where people can come on and check out your past stuff and what you're doing coming up the next couple of weeks.
Great. Okay. Well, I would suggest that you go to filmschoolradio.com, filmschoolradio.com, and check us out. We are on Twitter at Film School Radio, and I just signed up a week ago for my Instagram account, so nothing is posted there right now. So I'll keep you posted. Filmschoolradio.com is the best place to go. Thank you, Brian. For that. Yeah, thank you for letting me do that.
And what do you see coming up, movie-wise?
Well, I mentioned Sunlit Night, which I'm thrilled beyond words. What else have I got coming up? Dawn Porter's documentary about John Lewis. I'm hoping to interview her about. That's coming up. Oh boy, you caught me. What else have I got? There's a bunch. Just check it out. We're in a really good place right now. Outcry, the Showtime documentary, has just come out. It comes out tomorrow about the football player in Texas who was accused of molesting a 4-year-old boy. Amazing, amazing, amazing. I'll Be Gone in the Dark, the Liz Garbus documentary is coming out on HBO. I'll be interviewing her. So there it is.
Wow, you got some stuff. I mean, I'm like, I want to watch that. I want to watch that. And I want to watch that. See, this is why I like talking to you, because I'm not getting some of those. So with that, please go to filmschoolradio.com, because you will not be disappointed. For filmmakers and things like that, you do need to reach out to Mike, because he's been doing this for a while. How many interviews have you done, or movies have you done now, Mike?
In 13 years, we're well over 15, about 1,500 or a little over that right now, 1,500 filmmakers. Lots and lots of people that are directing tentpole movies were on for their first or second movie. So you can go back and look through the archives. Ava DuVernay, Damien Chazelle, Barry Jenkins, Ann Bowden. All of them have been on the show, and I'm so honored that they were. Errol Morris, you name them. Documentary
That's
world.
Great.
I love them. Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
All right,
thank you so very much.
So for movie reviews and more on iTube247.com out of Franklin, Tennessee, and the womanontv.tv, this is Brian Sebastian. We will see you next week. Oh, if you see someone without a smile, please give them one of yours, because the world needs it.